Yeah. Okay, so welcome again to Ecib.
Thank you.
I like to start just talking about the podcast, the Tim Deakins podcast, because you got us all hooked to it and listening to all the episodes and everything. So where did that idea come from? Where did it originate?
I think that when we were actually doing publicity for 1917, we were doing a lot of Q&As, and afterwards a lot of people would come up to us and they would oftentimes ask the same question. So I said to Roger, well, maybe we should do a podcast, because eventually, in the beginning, the idea is we would just go through those normal questions. But then we started it, and then lockdown.
First it happened that I asked, what is a podcast?
Yeah, oh yes, you did ask that. Right. And I'm not a big podcast person, so I also had to look it up. But we started it, and then lockdown came. So suddenly all these people also were home. So we did it over Zoom, and it took its own path, because we started talking to people and we realized that everybody, they may be doing the same job, but they come at it in a different way, and how interesting that is. And also, we firmly believe that a movie is made from so many different categories, and all those categories, it's interesting to us to find out what a casting director does or what the prop person does. And I think it's important for people to know that.
Trying to emphasize the idea of it's a team collaboration.
Yeah.
Team.
Yeah, and I also think that you discover a lot of how other people work, right? The last one I listened was the one with Ruth de Jong, the production designer, and how you talked about the pre-production, when she's used to be involved before the cinematographer, or when the cinematographer is. So there's a lot of discovery, I guess, also for you with talking with other people, right?
And also, people are different. Another production designer might do it in a different way, so it's interesting to us, because we only know the way we do it. So.
Yeah. So talking about other things that are now you're presenting now. Well, Byways. It's the book that I think it's like 2 years ago. It's when you launched it. And there's a lot of stills from you, Roger. But how was the process of curating the pictures? Like, how did you work with it? Because I guess there's much more than the ones here. Was it difficult?
Well, it was another lockdown project.
Yeah, it was a lockdown project. I don't have a lot of photographs, so it wasn't that difficult.
Well, Roger, he'll go out, and if he takes one photograph that day, it was a good day.
That week. That month, maybe. Yeah. Actually, if I get one every year, it's good.
Oh, stop.
So you're the ones that wait rather than first shot.
Oh, I do what I did this morning. Spend 4 or 5 hours just walking around somewhere and looking for something catches my eye.
Yeah, you may or may not find it.
But it doesn't matter, because I've experienced the place.
Yeah, the process of it is just as much fun as getting it.
Because it's interesting for me, because checking the book Byways and how it's like it has this chronological story. I see that there's a sense of movement on the pictures, especially the early ones with the farmers. Like, I think when you were doing those, you were still not studying cinema, right?
Yeah,
but there's still something cinematic of movement of a cinematography to a certain extent, rather than a still photographer, right? I don't know if you share that too.
Well, it certainly was when I was taking those photographs of like rural life in North Devon. A lot of it was very much kind of recording a process, so which is kind of akin to, frames in a movie.
Yeah, because then when you look at the latter ones, there's more about composition, there's more lines, there's a bit more quietness than the early ones. I don't know if you also see that evolution, or it's something that's just...
I don't know, because I look at some of the very, very early photographs I took, and I think they're very, very similar to my sensibility now, really. Yeah, I don't think there's... I don't tend to photograph people as much as I used to.
Okay,
and I think that's because people are more suspect of you holding a camera and pointing at them these days.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, because it's true that the later one is more like scenery and certain compositions, and perhaps people are more like skeptical when they see someone approaching with a camera now, right?
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
Especially if they have a child.
Yeah.
They're really
Those,
careful.
yeah, those things have changed. The other thing that I think is interesting about byways, like one of the last documentaries I worked in was about photographers, and I had the pleasure to work with some German photographers like Horst Schäfer or Donata Wenders, and Donata made a really interesting thoughts. She shared, because she photographs in black and white, and she shared that for her, she photographs in black and white because then it moves the photography away from realism, like it's less real up to a certain extent. It goes into a more abstract space, the black and white photography. So I guess, how do you share those things about black and white? Why do you choose to?
Yeah, I'd say the opposite. I'd say black and white feels more real to me because you don't have the distraction of color.
It's more stripped down.
It's more about what's in the frame and the juxtaposition of the images within the frame and the total framing of them. It's partly I like it because it's a sort of simplicity of the image. I think color can be really distracting. Though, I mean, there are photographers like Harry Griart and Alex Webb who use it color brilliantly, but I can't do that.
Yeah. So you still like precious the black and white and the photography.
Yeah.
And you still well, I guess you've already answered. You still carry a camera always with you.
Yeah, I've got one there, but yeah.
And is it analog, or do you have to switch to digital?
Sorry?
Analog photography, or have you like film photography, or have you switched to
When
digital?
did you switch to digital?
Oh, when did I switch to digital? Actually, the first digital camera I bought was the Leica M8 when they brought out a digital camera. I had a M6 Leica film camera, and then when they brought out a digital version, I thought, yeah, okay.
You know, it was interesting though, it changed a little bit because when you were doing film, you really would go weeks and not take a photograph. But when you were doing digital, you might do two photographs that week.
Yeah, it's true. I might bracket a shot now that I wouldn't have done before.
You seem to have a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, because on your book you also mentioned that you don't consider yourself a photographer. That
I don't what.
Don't
Sorry.
consider
Sorry.
yourself a
Oh,
photographer.
consider myself no way. This is just like my sketchbook. This is just kind of like odd things that.
But at the same time, like now that you're mentioning that sense of waiting for the picture, that's a bit similar also to some kind of documentary cinematography, right? So, and you started as a documentary cinematographer. So, is there anything that you miss from those days, from the early days of documentary cinematography?
Yeah, I mean, it's this very similar sort of, it's very, very similar approach, really, isn't it? I think, I mean, the documentary work that I did, whether I was working for a director or making a film with somebody else, we were making the film together or something. I mean, it's still observational. I rarely worked on documentaries that were structured with interviews and voice, that kind of thing. Usually you found a subject and followed it, so you're reacting to a subject in the same way as still photographs, really. You're reacting to the world around you. Yeah.
Do you think there's something from those experiences that you've carried to your work in fiction, or?
Well, most definitely, because I think any experience you have, you carry through to your work. The way you visualize something. I mean, it's a product of all those influences, and it probably goes back to my childhood, fishing, spending a lot of time, on the ocean, which I still do actually. But I mean, those things all have an effect. What you see, the way the light flows, kind of your emotional relationship with it.
I think also, though, don't you think that documentaries, it's only going to happen once, and you don't have a lot of time, so you have to figure out what shots will tell the story best, and that does come into
absolutely.
feature filmmaking.
But yeah, it's the same thing. You kind of you work in reality, but you're trying to find what for you is the best position for the camera to reflect what's in front of you. Yeah, so it's the same thing you do on a feature film, because you're watching a block in rehearsal with the actors in the morning, and you're kind of figuring, the best way to cover the scene and interpret what the director wants from the scene,
Yeah, I guess it's all about figuring out how to do it, right? And you have reality, or you've constructed some kind of reality in front of you, right? So talking more about fiction, and there's something that you mentioned these days also in the Q&As, but I'd like to know more about how's your first reaction when you write first time a script that it's just on your hands, and what does it need to have to say that yes, we're doing it?
When you read it.
Yeah, but it's the same. I mean, reading a script's the same as if you read a novel. Why do you like particular writers? I mean, it's why do you like particular stories? I mean, it's the same thing. You have to connect with it, I think, emotionally, or.
Yeah, I think you have to connect with the characters, and you have to connect maybe with the message, because if the script has some interesting characters, but the message is something that you think is actually sort of destructive or not good, I think we would pull away from it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's right.
Sorry, there's something else that you said on the book that made me think about the work as a cinematographer, right? When you talk about pictures, you write that the choice of when to take a picture on which of the resultant image has a future reveals something of us as individuals, right? Of each of us sees differently. Yeah. And we are drawn to subjects that resonate with us personally, and our interpretations differ through our choice of camera angle and composition, right? Mm-hmm. But how does that translate to your work as a cinematographer? I'm wondering in the sense of, does a cinematographer have a style by itself, by him or herself? In the sense of how much of the vision of the cinematography is pulled through, or are you working for the vision of the director, as you were mentioning yesterday, right? How long are we artists that are looking for the vision of another artist, right?
I don't like the word art for first straight off. No, as a cinematographer working for the director, but I mean, hopefully in that collaboration, everybody else that's on the crew, the cinematographer and everybody else that's on the crew, is having an effect on the final product, is putting a little bit of themselves into the work, But yeah, you're working for a director. I mean, taking photographs to me is quite a release, because it's like my decision what I take a picture of when I press the shutter. You've got, on a film, you've got pressure to actually achieve something within a schedule for somebody else.
And it really does depend on the cinematographer and their particular approach, because maybe some cinematographers do have a style and they see things a certain way. But I think when you approach a story, you're going for the story and what the director and the story want.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it if it was just like painted by numbers, If you had a way of lighting, if you every time you came up and put up a 20 by 20 muslin and put a light through it to light a shot, why would you do it? I mean, it's
not saying this is a bad idea.
No, but it's totally about the script and your reaction to it, and like every script and every shoot is like the first time you've ever done it. I mean, it should be, because it's really, you should be working from that story and from the director's interpretation of that story.
So the style belongs to the story and the director, not to each head of department, so to say. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you might have certain techniques, like I use a lot of silver stipple and gold stipple reflectors, and I use a lot of weird materials that other people probably don't use, because I go to a haberdashery and buy kind of different reflective materials, and but so I have different techniques, but that's not really that doesn't really impact the interpretation of the script. Really, that's just method.
Yeah, I like a lot of these reflections on the style, the story. Like I think there's the bones of the task that you have to do in the movie. Yeah, I think we just one question more. I just wanted to ask, like, after all these years and all the movies and all the directors you both have worked with, like, what is the thing that still makes you enjoy this profession and say, I want to do the next feature?
What I enjoy most is the collaboration. I mean, it's the experience and working with people that, it's the greatest high I've ever had has been working on a film where everybody's working together to the same end, to the same end product, and everybody's getting on together and enjoying the experience.
And it's also the excitement of having done all this planning and visualizing what this scene's going to be, and then everybody comes together and the actors are there, and then we run it and shoot it, and it's almost like magic.
And then you just see it come to life.
Yeah.
It's kind of wonderful.
Yeah, it's very
Even if it takes a bit of some years to really see it and enjoy
Yes,
it, right? Because you were mentioning
5
yesterday
years
that
later, we go, oh yeah, that did work.
Yeah. Well, no, that is the point. I mean, everything in film is a compromise. I mean, everything you do is bound to be, because it could always be better. But you have to. That's part of the process.
Thank you very much for your time and for everything. And Clarita, sí.
Take one.